Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Well, tonight I thought I would try something a little different, which is an unedited video, which I'm going to call Maya Uncut. And if you guys like it, maybe I'll make more of these in the future. But the reason I'm doing this one tonight is because I just heard an hour or two ago about the transgender military ban that President Trump has made official. Not just a tweet from our tweeter-in-chief, but an actual official policy that he has forwarded to the military. And as you can imagine, this is something that I do have an opinion about, and usually I try to keep my political opinions to myself on my channel. I mean, I like to keep this place a happy place, somewhere you guys can go to escape from the troubles of the world, and maybe laugh a little and learn a little, but overall, you know, just be entertaining. But this is really just something too big to just leave unanswered. And, you know, we don't have any details about it at this point. Rumor is that he may leave the people who are transgender currently in the military in place and ban new members who may be transgender from coming in. At least the ones that they know about or would self-declare, although I don't know who would self-declare as transgender at this point, given that. But none of this really makes sense to me. I mean, first of all, either we're fit to serve or unfit to serve. So if the ban doesn't include current members, why would he allow people that he considers unfit to continue to serve? You know, either it's going to be all of us out or none of us out. Anything else just really doesn't make sense. And really, if it's just a case of expense, why would he allow an expense to continue that he might feel should go to other places? That doesn't make any sense to me either. And none of what he's doing is based on any kind of actual real data. I mean, worse yet, it actually contradicts the RAND study that the military had commissioned to look into this and look into transgender folks, you know, serving in the military. I mean, everything they came back with was that it would not be a disruption and that it actually wouldn't even cost that much money. So, like a lot of things President Trump seems to do, this seems to be based just on his personal opinion, or maybe something he read on Breitbart or something. I don't know. But all I know is that it isn't actually based on any kind of fact. And, you know, it's just an opinion, just like his asshole. You know, everybody has assholes and everybody has opinions, and apparently he's got a lot of assholes. Or maybe he's just one giant asshole. I don't know. I think I vote for the latter. Yeah, that makes more sense to me. Now, why do I really care about this? You know, I am not going to go into the military. And I don't know anybody currently who, you know, is a friend of mine who is in the military serving. Well, the thing is, it makes a statement about what transgender people are and what we mean to society and the way we're looked at in society. He's all of a sudden cast us as undesirable, which is of course something that we've always been portrayed as, but in this case, it's coming from the very highest office of the land. It's making official a society feeling. It's giving weight to a misconception about what it is to be transgender in our society. You know, I think a lot of people think we are this mass of complicated procedures and surgeries and all kinds of medications that they have no idea about. But in actuality, the reality is that we're just like anybody else. I mean, yes, we were born with this, you know, with this transgender feeling that we had that we couldn't explain. It takes us usually quite a long time to deal with, or in the case of some lucky people, you know, they find out right away or at a very early age about themselves. But at the end of the day, dealing with it isn't really all that complicated, and a lot less complicated than a lot of things out there that I'm sure a lot of people serve with already in the military. You know, there's this idea that in order to be transgender, you come out, you start this medical transition, and then you get surgery at the end. You know, but the truth is that there's all kinds of transgender people out there. We come in all kinds of different flavors, and some of us don't take medications at all. Some of us do. Some of us get surgeries. Not that many of us get the final surgery for a variety of reasons. And those of us who do get the surgery, I think there's this idea that, there's going to be people joining the military, walking up the first day to a doctor there, and saying, hey, I'm transgender and I want the surgery right now. As if it was an elective surgery as easy to get as a breast augmentation. But it's not. There's a lot of therapy and hoops you have to jump through before you could even be considered for surgery. It's, in most cases, you have to live for a year in your chosen gender before you can even consider getting surgery. You need letters from therapists. It's not a simple thing. And I don't understand why people think it is. I don't know if it's media messaging out there or what, but all I know is that we need to do a better job of educating people on these things, because obviously it can have real world consequences. But I think even for those folks who do get surgery, I think there's this idea that, people are going to get surgery and then they're not going to be able to serve for a year and a half. And, that's most of their enlistment and all these kinds of things I've heard about and read about in my news feeds. And I can tell you from my personal experience that I was actually playing softball 5 weeks after my surgery. I mean, don't tell my surgeon that. It should have been 6 weeks. Yes, I know, 6 weeks. 6 weeks is what it should be. But even considering the strenuous demands of the military, I can't see where somebody would be out more than a few months and then could be back at their job. It just doesn't work that way. And I don't understand why people think it does. It just drives me insane. Now, society already thinks we're freaks. Let's face it, they already do. This doesn't help. And these medications we require are not strange, exotic things. They're really just hormones that most cisgender people take for other kinds of conditions. I know in the case of transgender women, the estrogen we take is really just like the same stuff that women take who are in menopause. They're not that expensive. They're not that difficult to get. And unlike a lot of other medications out there, if we don't get them, we're not gonna die. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be very uncomfortable, but we're not gonna fly off into a hormonal rage, and start being, unreliable military members just because we didn't get our estrogen, pill or a testosterone shot. It just doesn't work that way any more than, an older woman would, in the military would suddenly be unfit for her role. I mean, let's face it. A lot of these arguments I've heard before, I mean, they were used to keep women out of the military in the first place. There was a lot of arguments made in the past that cisgender women couldn't serve because when they were on their time of the month, they would just be distracted by that and have cramps and wouldn't, be able to I don't know, fight or something, or they would go off into hormonal rages, or I don't know what it is, but I've heard these arguments before, and they are just as invalid now as they were then. The other thing is that, we already serve in the military in a lot of places, including the US. I mean, in the UK and in Australia and then in the Israeli armies, we are already serving out and proud. And they have not found any reason to keep us from serving there. All the data that has come from those militaries has suggested that we can serve and serve with distinction. Here in the US, we've been serving for many years. I don't get this misconception that we're not already there, in large numbers, and have been for decades. I mean, Kristen Beck served with SEAL Team 6, and she came out as a transgender person afterwards. I mean, it's just incredible to me that people have this idea that it, just like with the bathrooms, they somehow think that there are these laws that are being written, or there's this consideration being made to whether we should serve in the, now as if it was a new thing, and it just isn't true. We were already there. We were already in bathrooms. We were already in the military. And if we can already serve, and serve with distinction and with valor, why all of a sudden this about face? You know, all I can think about is that people are just becoming aware that we're there and are really just uncomfortable with it. And it's really just prejudice that's keeping us, you know, from now serving openly, not any actual thing based in data. You know, even opponents of things like bathroom bills, when they're asked to come up with examples of their worst fears of what might happen when these laws are passed allowing transgender people, you know, to legally enter into these spaces, you know, they can't ever come up with an example. That's because there aren't any. And I'm sure if there were, it'd be splashed all over conservative media. And we just don't hear about it. You know, we also don't hear about some transgender person in the middle of Iraq or Afghanistan just snapping or not being able to serve at all because of some, you know, lack of medication or mental instability. You know, I think a lot has been made also. I've heard a lot of people tell us or say at least in my newsfeed that we are mentally unstable, that we are just sick or delusional, or that, you know, being transgender is a mental disorder. Well, that is very antiquated thinking. I mean, in the latest diagnostic manuals for, you know, psychologists, being transgender is no longer listed as a disorder. You know, basically what causes a problem with transgender people is dysphoria. And dysphoria really comes from not being able to deal with the idea that we're transgender in the first place. It comes from not addressing the issue. It doesn't come from something being inherent in being transgender itself. It's basically societal pressures that keep us from dealing with it in the first place, that kind of leads to this disconnect that we can't, that we're not allowed to deal with, or we don't allow ourselves to deal with. But if somebody already is identified as transgender, they've already taken a huge step to reducing that gender dysphoria. And things like hormones and therapy would only lessen it. I mean, the thing about being transgender is that there's a pretty easy way to deal with it. You know, there is a prescribed method for getting over that dysphoria. But at the end of the day, if people don't think trans is a thing, you know, if people think that trans is actually a delusion, that's going to cause more problems than anything. And, you know, it leads to rejection. It leads to families turning their back on transgender people. It leads to friends rejecting, you know, transgender people and saying that, you know, you are sick, get away from us, you're perverted. I think we've all heard those terrible things, and sometimes it leads to worse things. It leads to our murders. I mean, a lot of people don't know that of the entire LGBT community, transgender people are the ones who are most likely to be victimized, you know, and frankly killed. And transgender women of color at the top of that pyramid there, and it's not a great place to be. So a lot of these things that make our lives uncomfortable, that make being transgender difficult to deal with, don't come from being transgender itself. It comes from how society sees us. And that's where the Trump transgender military ban has its worst impact. It's because he's basically saying that is okay, that is the right, that is an officially sanctioned government position. And it's just going to embolden those folks who are arrayed against us, who basically say the same thing, you know. And at the end of the day, there is a cure for being trans, and that is love and acceptance, you know, not just from society, which actually is, of course, you know, as I was saying, extremely important, but love and acceptance of ourselves. And I can't help but wonder what a young transgender person, waking up tomorrow morning and reading these news is going to feel about themselves. It can't be a comfortable thing. It can't be a happy thing. And to you, I would say, you are okay, just the way you are, There are people out there who do love you and accept you, and I am one of those people. So, all I can say is that President Trump, you're not helping us, and frankly, you're not helping our country. Anyway, on that note, like, share, and subscribe, and see you around the interwebs.